Alright, so good morning once again to everyone. Welcome to another class. So we're still looking at 7.3. We're looking at all of the functions that we can use. Well, some of the functions, because these are not all, that we can use in our spreadsheet to make our calculations a lot more easier. So the next function we're supposed to look at is the sum function, and it's a simple function. We use it to add numbers together. So if we were to create a formula for adding numbers, it would have looked something like this here. Like what you're seeing on the screen here. It would have been B1 plus B2 plus B3 plus B4, and if you had to add maybe all the way to B175, that would take a very long time. You have to keep adding each cell individually. But the sum function allows you to add all of those cells without having to type so much. So when you're using the sum function, you can add values. So numbers can be in the function as you see here, or you can use the cell reference as you see in the example here. You can use the cell names, or you can add a range as you see in this example, or even you can do a combination of all three of them. You can use the cell name, you can use the cell range, and you can use the number or the value. So to look at how the sum function works, if we were to create a formula equal, let me put in some numbers. Good, we have some numbers there. And if we wanted to create a formula to add those numbers, it would be equal B1 plus B2 plus B3 plus B4 and continuing onward. That's going to take a lot of time. So that would be ineffective. The more effective method would be to use the sum function. So we start with the equal, the name of the function sum, and in the brackets now we can put what we want to calculate. Say if we actually just want to calculate numbers, for example 10, 20, 30, and we complete by closing the brackets, we have our calculations there. We have 60. It adds the numbers together. Now if we want the cells, we can do B1, we can do B5, we can do B10, and enter, and we have our calculations there. So it's adding the cell names. If we want a range, we can either type in the range B1 colon B10, or the more easier method would have been to just simply highlight it, and that would have entered our range, and when we enter to complete, we have our calculation here. It added all of the numbers. Now let's see. So you can add the range. So we have a range here. You can put a comma, and you can actually put in a number. Say for example 60, and we could put another comma. We put another number 60, and we could even put a cell. For example, this cell D4, and maybe we even put another cell B4. And it still will calculate all of those and give you your answer. So the sum function, it is used to calculate add numbers together, and it's important to remember that it can use a combination of all of those. So in exam, they might give you something similar to this here, and then they might trick you to thinking you can't add everything that is in the bracket. But you just have to be careful and just carefully look at how they put the information in the bracket. Once they are separated by that comma, it is possible to add them together. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. So it's a simple function. If you just want to add some numbers together, you would use the sum function. Good. Now, the Vlookup function, this one here, it's a bit tricky. Not everyone gets it at the first go. But you have to try to understand it. It's one of the more powerful functions that we're going to use, and it's actually simple when you get to understand it, but for some reason it can be a little tricky as to getting to understand it at first. But let's see if you guys can get it on the first go. So Shane, can you read let's see, the first two paragraphs for us?
Yes, sir. Vlookup. The syntax is equal to Vlookup, open bracket, value you want to look up, the range of data where the value is located in the first column, the column number relative to the first column containing the additional information you need, whether the list in the first column of the range is sorted or not sorted, close bracket. Vlookup searches of the first column in a table of data for a value. If the value is not found, any other value in that row can be selected. The V in Vlookup represents looking vertically down the first column.
Good. So let's take apart what we have read so far. Now, I've underlined the main points. The syntax is a bit lengthy because they're trying to describe exactly what the arguments are. So the first argument, value you want to look up. The purpose of VLOOKUP, I'm going to give you guys an example. The purpose of VLOOKUP is, for example, how we have this 199 here. We can, if we're in another sheet, we can bring that value over into this sheet here. Now, some of you might be thinking, why can't we just type back 199? Well, think of this situation here. If this calculation was to change, I change that to 30. This changed to 219. The value over here did not change. So I have to go manually update it now to 219. And that would be ineffective. So the more effective method would be to link this cell here basically with this cell over here. That's basically VLOOKUP. It's going to link the two cells together so that if this value at any point in time it changes, it is going to change over here also. So say for instance, you're creating a spreadsheet dealing with money, or you're creating a spreadsheet dealing with grades, and this number is very important here. It can be used for any part of the your calculation and so on. And now, instead of you manually typing it everywhere that you want to use it, say for instance, this might be a we're gonna look at it from like a money's perspective. Say this is the price for chocolate. That there is the price for chocolate. So now, other parts of the spreadsheet, you're gonna want to use the price for chocolate. So instead of you manually changing everywhere that you have the price of chocolate in your spreadsheet, you can have it change automatically. It's just as how when your formula is being calculated, it does so automatically. Whenever I change this number here, the calculation automatically changes. It's the same thing you want with your data. That if you're using, for instance, the price of chocolate, if you're using this price in sheet 2, and maybe you're using it in sheet 3 also, maybe you're using it in another sheet also, wouldn't it make sense for it to automatically change in those sheets also? Would it? What do you guys think? Does it make sense or does it not make sense?
Oh, it kind of makes sense, so yeah.
Because if you're dealing with a business, you're going to want it to change for you automatically. Because if it doesn't change, it can affect different calculations. Because, say for instance, this 219 remain, as a lower price there, it can affect your business. You could end up running at a loss. One part of your business has 389 as the price, but another part has 219, and you're basically going to be robbing yourself. So when it comes to using data, like for example the price of chocolate, and we're going to use it in different locations in the spreadsheet, you're going to want all the prices to be the same whenever it changes. So instead of you going and change it manually every time on each sheet, say for instance we had it on different sheets, instead of you going and manually change it every time chocolate change, I have to go and manually type 389 and then 389 there, and then for some reason the price of chocolate gone up again, then I have to go and manually change it again. That's going to take a lot of time, and then you might not even know where the location is for the, where you put the other parts of the data, where you have that chocolate price. So it can affect your calculations and so on. So a more effective method is to link the cells together, so that when this 489 changes, it will change on sheet 2, it will change on sheet 3, and it will also change on sheet 4. You guys think you getting the idea?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Basically, all you want is that you have like a central location for your data, and the same data that you're going to use somewhere else, you want it to be the same. I gave the example of price. You always want your price to be the same, because if it's not the same, it can affect your business. So in order to get it to be the same, we use a function called Vlookup. This is just one of the many functions that we can use. So going back to the syntax, the first part of the syntax is value you want to look up. So in this case here, if we go back to our spreadsheet, we can be in another sheet and we want to look for this value of 489. So that in this case here, that is the value we want to look up. That is the value we want to look for. So that's the first part of the syntax. The second part of the syntax is the range, or basically we're telling it where to find the data. So we're going to tell it what is the range of data that has that piece of lookup value. So for instance, our range could just be this here because we don't have any other data, or our range could have been this here. That it would be our data there. So I'm going to type chocolate over here, and chocolate, Skittles, how much? 300, and M&M 500. So we have 3 items here. So this could be our range. We have a small table of items. This is our range here. So this is the second part of the syntax, where the data is located. Now the third part of the syntax is the column number that we want. So basically, in this example here, our lookup value is actually going to be chocolate. We are going to be looking for chocolate. We're not going to look for the price first. We're going to look for chocolate because that's the first column in the table, or the first column in the range. So we're going to look for chocolate. That's how we use VLOOKUP. We look for the first column. What data is in that first column? So that's going to be our lookup value. The range is going to be this small table here. And the column number now is basically what do we want to bring over into the other sheet. So in this case here, it's going to be the price. So that's going to be the second column that we want to bring over, or we're going to check to see if they term it as the first column or the second. But basically we want to bring over this column here. And then lastly, the last part of the syntax is whether the data is sorted or not. So let's look at an example to see if all of that could make some sense. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to type chocolate. Actually, I'm just going to copy the names. Good. So we're basically recreating the same table. And to recreate the same table, we're going to use VLOOKUP. Now I need to name my range. So I'm going to highlight the entire table. And I'm going to name it snacks. Because I have to use that range. So we're creating the VLOOKUP formula now. So that's going to be equal VLOOKUP. So the first value here, the first argument is the lookup value, what you are looking for. So in this case here, in most cases, when you're creating the VLOOKUP formula, when you're creating this function here, the lookup value is usually going to be almost close by, basically in the same row. So we're basically looking for chocolate. So that's why we're going to put D6, because we're looking for that word chocolate. That's our lookup value. The second part now is where we are looking for that chocolate. So that's our table array. If you look back at the syntax, the argument, it's the range of data. So that's going to be that range that I just created, snacks. And the third argument is the column number. So that's going to be column number 2 that I want to bring over. And then whether the data was sorted or not. We're going to put false because I don't think I sorted it. So false, it was not sorted. So it's going to bring over the exact data. And when I close that bracket here, notice when I'm going to format it, notice I have my 489. Notice 489 over here. And when I autofill, I have my prices here, 300 and 500, 300 and 500. So if I change the prices, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, notice it's going to change in this sheet here also. So it automatically changed in this sheet. So any other location that would have that data, it would automatically change also. So let me go over the VLOOKUP formula once again. So VLOOKUP, it searches the first column, as this paragraph here mentioned. VLOOKUP searches the first column in the table for a value. So the table is the range that you are looking at. In this case here, the range or the table is this small table that I have here of the 3 items. So it's looking at this range, it's looking at this table here for that data. So this is the main location for the data. Are you guys following there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Alright, so I'm going to try to break it down a little more. Let me delete this data over here. Let me delete this data over here so that doesn't confuse you. So normally when you use VLOOKUP, you have a main table. This is our main table here. We have items and we have prices. This is our main table. So in this main table now is where all the other sheets are going to get its data from. It's where all the other sheets are going to get the price from. So this is our main table, this is our main range. So this is the range, this is the table that the VLOOKUP is talking about all the time. So VLOOKUP, the first paragraph here, VLOOKUP searches the first column in a table of data for a value. So it searches the first column. So that's going to be this column here. It searches the first column for a value. So that is why when I was creating my VLOOKUP, I was looking for chocolate, because chocolate is in the first column. So you always have to look for what is in the first column, because VLOOKUP actually only looks to the right. That's something important to remember. VLOOKUP only looks to the right. So if you had actually created your range, basically what I just highlighted there, if this was your range here, just say for example this was your range, VLOOKUP would not have been able to see the item name, because this here was your range. It cannot look to the left. So that is why when you're creating your range, creating your table, you have to put the entire table, and basically the least important data is going to be on the left side, and what you want on is going to be on the right hand side. So that's why earlier when I had chocolate on the right hand, I had to put it on the left hand side, because that's going to be what I am looking for. So going back to the paragraph, it looks at the first column, and when it finds the value, if the value is found, you can look for any other value in the row. So going back to our table, if chocolate is found, any value in that row can be selected and brought over to another sheet. Or it doesn't even have to be another sheet. It could actually be created right here. So if there was data in this column here, say for instance there was a discount, 4%, 3%, 4%, say this was discount, then we could have brought over this data here also. So in this case here, this would be the third column, and we could have brought over the discount over into the other sheet. So the VLOOKUP formula, it looks at a table, it looks at a range, it looks at the first column in that range. So remember this example, that's going to be the column with the item names. When it has found that value that it is looking for, any other value in that row, you can basically select that value or use that value in the VLOOKUP. So if you wanted prices, that's going to be the second column. If you wanted discount, that would have been the third column. Say for instance there was also VAT, 14% VAT. Just say for example this maybe was 15, that one was 16, and this here is going to be the fourth column that it can bring over. So anything here in that row, it can bring over into the other table or the other cell. Now the V in VLOOKUP represents vertically down, so it's also called vertical lookup because it's looking vertically. It's looking at the data vertically, going up and down. Do you guys think you're understanding?
Sir, question. When you say that the data on your right, it can bring over, right? Doesn't the VAT and the discount have to be in the range for it to go over? Or
Yes,
it can just go just like that?
that is correct. So I would have to add these two into the range in order for it to be brought over because it won't be able to see it. So based on what you said there, if I change this actually to a 3, I won't get anything because my snacks range is only what I have highlighted there. What's happening? Yeah, my snacks range is only what I have highlighted in yellow. So if I extend the range now, but I'm going to name it something else. So if I name it snacks 2, and I update it here now, snacks 2. So now we can bring over that third column. Now we can bring over the fourth column. So yes, whatever, it's because I created the table small. So if this was a larger table, however much data, remember this would have been the final table. This would have been your original. So if this entire screen here was your table, you were required to highlight everything and make it your range so that you can basically use any other column to carry over your data. Alright, let me continue reading the paragraph and then we can continue looking at the other parts of it. Shalon, could you read for us? Shalon? Sharmini?
Yes, sir. An example of performing a lookup could be searching for grades on a
Muting,
listing on. Sir?
Yeah, start over, Sharmini. I didn't realize my computer was muted.
Right. An example of performing a lookup could be searching for grades on a list pinned on a notice board. The list is searched vertically until the correct ID number or name is located. Then the associate row is searched until the grade is found. The function in figure 7.28 is similar to those steps. The function equal vlookup bracket b8 plus 2 false close bracket. Search is the first column in a range name class for the jazz class close bracket. And then searches across the row to column 2 for the day of the class. The list of classes is not sorted, so false is entered at the end of the function. The day returned is Saturday. The function equal vlookup, open bracket, b8, class 3, false, close bracket, while return 10 a.m. at the time of the class. The value number is changed to return another set of data based on the class.
Okay, good. So they gave us an example there. And remember, VLOOKUP, it stands for vertical lookup. It searches vertically in the table. So it searches top to bottom. And then when it has found that data, the associated row, it looks in that row for that piece of data. So let's look at this example here. So in this example, we have this range of data here. This is their range of data, what they have highlighted in red. So on the left hand side, they're searching for jazz. At the bottom, they're searching for jazz. So they created equal VLOOKUP B8. So B8 is the cell with jazz here. So that is what they're looking for. And notice their lookup value. This is called the lookup value. What you're looking for. That's called your lookup value. Notice it's right next to the lookup formula. It's right next to the lookup function. So normally when you're creating your VLOOKUP, your lookup value is usually right next to your function that or your formula that you are creating. The second part of the syntax is the range, the table, where the data is located. They would have named their range class. So that's the red part here that you're seeing. Now they want to bring over, or they want to extract from the table the second column of data. So that's going to be the day. The day is the second column, that's why they have 2. And if the data is not sorted, we're going to use false. If you look at it, the data is not sorted. So we're going to use false because it is not sorted. And if we look at the right hand side, Saturday was brought over because Saturday is in that same row as jazz. So if this Saturday was to ever change, it would change over here also. If they wanted to bring over the 10 a.m., what would the formula be? What would the function be? No one? Does anyone understand anything about the VLOOKUP? Are still very confusing? If you guys don't respond, I don't know if I can how to help you or not.
Sir, I feel as though I grasped the main concept.
So Robert grasped the main concept. Somebody else said something.
I'm saying it's still confusing a bit.
Alright, what part is confusing?
Sir, this example you just explained.
Alright. You want us to look at this example, or you want me to give an example?
You give an example.
Alright. Let's do I have an assignment? Alright, we're gonna use the same table here. Let me highlight that and put that in yellow, and then put that there. So this here is our table. So I am running a business, and this is my main table. This is where I would document everything. This is my main location. So forget everything about VLOOKUP. Just focus on thinking about you are running a business. Say you have a shop, a small shop, and you're selling these items here. You're selling chocolate, you're selling Skittles, you're selling M&M. And there could be more items below. Eventually you're going to add more items. As your business grow, you're going to add more items, and you might add more information here, continuing the table and so on. But we're just going to work with this table for now. So you're running your business, you documented these items, you're given this discount, the person have to pay this VAT, and so on. So this is your main table. Now, say for instance now, on the same sheet, you just wanted to know, you don't want to affect this main table, because remember this is where the main data is. So you don't want to affect and mistype anything, and then you accidentally delete some information. So let me see if I'm going to name this, let's come to that later. So what you want to do, you want to know basically what discount you're giving out. So you're going to put item, you're going to create another table. So in this case, you're going to create item and discount. So somewhere else in your spreadsheet, you want to know what is the item and what discount you're giving out. You don't want to affect this table here. So you're basically going to extract it somewhere else. So the VLOOKUP can help you with this here. So the first thing you need to do is to use the first column. So in this case here, it's going to be the item name. So I'm going to copy the item name. I'm going to paste it under the item names in my new table. For example also, if I had numbered my items, if I had numbered them 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, 3 and so on, then I could have, and I have added it into the range, then I could have used this first column here to look for all the other data. But I didn't add that, so I'm going to use the item name. So item name is the first column, so that's what I'm going to use for my lookup value. Lookup value is always going to be the first column of data in that table. So going back to the syntax, somebody said the syntax is confusing. That's why I underlined the main points of the syntax. It's just trying to explain it in detail what the syntax is about. But in a nutshell, the first part of the syntax is basically what you want to look up. That's the first part of the syntax. What you are looking for. Your lookup value. That's what we call it, your lookup value. So the lookup value is basically chocolates. I'm going to be looking for chocolate. So whatever cell chocolate is in, that is your lookup value. So chocolate is currently in cell J11. That is my lookup value. Now because I am also created in the same table, the same sheet, I could have used C6 as a lookup value. Nothing is wrong there. But it can cause problems later on if you start the table or if you made any changes with the table. So that's why normally wherever you are creating that VLOOKUP, so say for instance I'm creating it here, your lookup value would usually be right next to it. Because if this here changes, then it's going to also reflect over here. So that's why we're going to use this chocolate here as our lookup value, cell J11. So that's the first part of our syntax. What is the lookup value? The range now is where you are going to look for that data. What is the table that has all of that data that you're looking for? So that is why we name the range. Well, now I'm going to name my range. I'm going to highlight everything. And I'm going to name it items. So these are all my items here. So that there is the second part of the syntax. I have my range there now. The third part of the syntax is the column number. Basically, which one of the data do you want to have inside of your new table? What do you want to bring over into the new table? Which column? Do you want the second column with the prices? Do you want the third column with the discount? Or do you want the fourth column with the VAT? If there was more columns, you use those numbers. So in this case here, we only have 3 columns, additional columns. So that's going to be a second column with prices, third column with discount, fourth column with VAT. And the last part of the syntax is whether it is sorted or not. Sorted means alphabetically or numerically. Is there any order to the data? I did not sort the data, so that last part there, I would say false. It is not sorted. So let's look at creating it now. Equal VLOOKUP. And the first part of the syntax is our lookup value. What am I looking for? I am looking for chocolate. J11, cell J11. That's what I'm looking for. Comma. Where am I looking for this data? Where am I looking for chocolates? I have to put in my range now. Well, I already named it. So I'm going to put in items. So equal VLOOKUP. My lookup value of J11. Items is the range. So notice it's highlighted there. And then the third part now is the column. What column do I want to bring over? So the column that I am working on in the new table is the discount column. So that's going to be the third column in my main table. So I'm going to put 3, comma, and basically true or false. if it is sorted or not. So I did not sort it, so I'm going to put false, and that's basically it. It brought over my 14% here, so I just have to format it now, the 4%. And if I bring it down now, I autofill it, I'm going to get the other percentages here. So, once again, the first syntax is what you are looking for. The second argument, where you are looking. In that table, which column do you want to bring over? And whether it is sorted or not. You guys think you at least grasped something?
Yes, sir. I seem to grasp it better now.
Okay. So let me try to create one now. Say we want to create one for price. So you guys are gonna help me to create the one for price now. So we're gonna start with equal Vlookup. What should be my lookup value? What am I supposed to
J11, sir. J11.
Sir,
J11?
K11?
Yes, but why J11?
Sir, because you're looking for the chocolate, yeah.
Good. And good. So one thing to remember, um, whenever you are using that VLOOKUP, it's usually going to be in a table also. It's usually going to be in a table format that you're looking for that piece of data. And your lookup value, you would try to put it right next to the VLOOKUP, because look what could happen. Say for instance, this chocolate here, you can actually change the name. This chocolate, you can actually change it to now Skittles. So notice I just changed chocolate to Skittles, and the value change. If I change it to M&M, the value changes here also. So that is why when you're using the lookup value, you use it very close by, because say for instance, I just want to look for the value. I'm not just creating a table, a permanent table. I'm just looking for the value. Then in this case here, I could just simply type in names of items that I have, and the value is going to change 5%. The value is going to reflect whatever I type in. But if you're going to create that permanent table, that's when you're going to have all of the names. So that's why you try to put the lookup value close by. Alright, so we're looking at creating that VLOOKUP for price. So equal VLOOKUP and J11, that's going to be our lookup value. So what is our table array?
Sir, items?
Items, good. Yes, that's the name of the range that I would have created. Good. Items, comma. Now what is the column do I want to bring over?
Sir, column D?
Column D. Remember, we're looking for the number.
Sir, that would be column 2.
Column 2. Remember, you have to look at the range. You have to look at the range, look at the table. Don't, in this case here, you're not looking at the letters at the top here. So when you're using VLOOKUP, ignore the letters at the top and just focus on the range. And based on the range, you're going to count the columns in that range. So in this case here, items is going to be column 1, prices is going to be column 2, discount is column 3, VAT is column 4. So we put 2 because we want the price. Remember, creating for price. And do we put true or false?
Sir,
False,
true.
so you want to sort it?
False, because we did not sort anything. Good. Now we complete that. Okay, spell false and correct. Good. False. So we have our item price there. And when we bring it down, we have the other prices for the item. Now, going back to that range. Say, for instance, we had started this range from prices. If I had, say I'm going to name this here now, new. Notice my new range is from prices. So even though items is a part of this table, my range that I created started from prices. So prices is going to be my first column. Some students they end up getting mixed up with this here. They create the range, but they don't create the range for the entire table. And the column numbers only can start from the range that you created. So if we actually put new here, it's not going to work because for in the first place, chocolate is not in this range here. So unless I put 1,000 here, that is when you're going to get something because 1,000 is in the first column in this new range here. That is in the first column. So that's what I was trying to explain earlier, that the table or the range that you would have created, you always have to look at the first column in that range. So in this case here, it would be new. In the other range that I created with items, that would be the item name. So it always looks at the first column. So even if I type in the 5%, it won't find it. Notice we're using that new range. Notice the red party that is highlighted. But even though I'm searching for 5%, it is not finding that 5%. Even though it has 5% in that range. Because it is only looking at this first column in that range. So that's why when you're creating your range, it has to be for the entire table, and the first column in that range has to be something that you can search for. So in this case here, that is why I put the item name first, because that's easier to search for than prices. You can easily type in the item name and to search for that. So unless you put in 1,000 or maybe 1,500, okay, that's percentage. 1,500. Good. Only then will you get information here in this column here. So whatever is the range, the first column, it always gets looked at, and in that range you have to count the columns. So prices now is going to be column 1, discount now is going to be column 2, and VAT is going to be column 3. So you're looking at the range that you create and you count from that there. Anyone with any questions?
So excuse me. So let's say how to put this? Okay, you want to put like instead of inserting discount by itself, price by itself, VAT by itself, you want to put all three together, right?
Into one
Like
cell?
yeah, make Yeah, no, not one cell. Like you want put all together. Like you see, yeah, you want to, okay,
You want to put all of them into this table at once.
yeah, all at once.
No, that won't be possible. It's because we would need to create the VLOOKUP individually for each one of them. And Ronnie is left. Yeah, he was asking if we can bring over all of these values here all at once. No, that's not possible. You have to create it individually for each column. Anyone with any other questions? Let's see. VLOOKUP is going to be the more difficult one. So let's see, job SF. Today's what? Today's the 31st. Alright, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to start working on these exercises. I was gonna wait until we finish with the chapter, but I'm gonna give you guys to start working on it because I think it's already covered. We covered most of the content. Yeah, it's only about functions. So we covered most of the functions, and it is going to give you some practice with the functions, and it's going to give you some practice with VLOOKUP also, because there's an exercise here at exercise 5 that will give you an example of how to use VLOOKUP. So hopefully that can help you to understand VLOOKUP a little more. So you're going to do that exercise, all of those exercises, for next week's class. And what we're going to do, we're going to review, actually, let's see, because we want to finish off the chapter first. Alright, so relative and absolute addressing, manipulating. Yeah, I think next week's class. Alright, we're gonna see what happens because we still have a few more content to finish off for the chapter. But start working on the exercises. I want you guys to work in pairs. There's some persons that do not have a computer. What I would like for those persons to do, if you don't have a computer, please send a message in the WhatsApp group that you don't have a computer. So at least persons who are willing to work with you that have a computer, they can be able to help you out. You guys can do a Google Meet or you can do a Zoom and you can work together on the exercise. If you don't get a partner with a computer and you have a phone, you have a tablet and you want to work on it on your own, you can use what's the name man? Google Sheets. You can use Google Sheets. So this should be able to work on your phone and it should be able to use most of the functions that we would have learned so far. So you can use that for your exercise also. But I also want you to work in pairs because I want you to know from now who you are able to work with. Because your SBA is going to be coming up soon. So basically like find a partner that you can work with and you can know from now if you're capable of working with that person instead of reaching to the SBA and you're gonna have issues with that person. But try to find somebody without a laptop, without a device, and see if you can help that person. Because in the future, when we get to, for example, next term we're gonna get a database, and there is no Google form, there is no Google application for that. There is no Google database. We have Google Docs, we have Google Sheets, but there is no online application for that. So just try to help your colleagues out in that area to see to get their work done, to help them to understand the different software. In the meantime, maybe sometime in the future they might get a laptop or something of that sort. Are we following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any questions before we conclude? Any questions, comments, suggestions?
Sir, excuse me, Mr. said he can't make it today. He has to go out. Yeah, important, so he can't make it.
Okay. All right. So work on your exercises. Remember, if you don't have a computer, send a message in the group, or you can send a message to me if you're not confident in sending it in the group, so that I can try to find somebody with a computer. But remember these exercises. You're gonna work at it in groups, and you're gonna submit it to the classroom as part of your first coursework. All right. So if you guys don't have any questions, we're gonna end here for today.
Goodbye, sir.